Is your car poisoning you? Toyota teases a car that's greener than the Prius. And Ferrari just wants to go faster. This is Car Tech Live for February 23rd, 2012. I am Wayne Cunningham in the studio with Antoine Goodwin and Mitch Chang at the board. Brian Cooley is not with us today. Got better things to do, I guess, than talk about cars. But what better thing is there to do than talk about cars?
Drive cars.
Drive cars, that's true.
Crash cars.
That might be the
backflips in cars.
Backflips in cars.
Do things in the back seat of cars.
Well, yeah, okay.
It's a long list.
It is a long
pretty
list.
long list.
Yeah.
So what's this about toxic cars? Like that's
Toxic cars, yes. There's been a new report just released by the, what is it, healthystuff.org? Or I guess that's the site where it came out on. And it, let's see. They documented, actually, it's the Ecology Center. They documented all the toxic materials in cars. You know how cars outgas?
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that's what they're dealing with here is the amount of bad stuff in your car. And so there's one chart here where they're actually looking at well, first off, let's talk about which cars scored the worst. The Mitsubishi Outlander Sport actually apparently has the worst materials in its cabin. And they're talking about things like the front seat has bromine, lead, antimony, and mercury. And they rate it in parts per
million.
Parts per something. It might be parts per million. Yeah, I guess it must be parts per million. ppm. Armrest has fairly similar quantities of those materials, and although no mercury in the armrest, strangely enough. Shift knob has chromium. Steering wheel has chromium. All that stuff, I guess, can be bad for you.
So, I mean, is this just like being emitted? Like you leave your car parked in the sun, is like the dashboard like silently like emitting this in a chemical reaction, or are they just saying don't eat it?
I think this stuff slowly emits over time. And I think everything, they mentioned, some of the stuff goes for like the fire retardant materials and things
Mm-hmm.
like that. They mentioned polyvinyl chloride, PVC, brominated flame retardants. Those are all in there. And those are all, they're kind of supposed to stay in the seats and the plastics and all that, but in the materials. But, you can't keep that stuff down, and it'll slowly sort of, you're sitting amongst it all.
Right.
So there will be outgassing or off-gassing, I guess they call it, and you will breathe in some of that stuff. They mentioned the new car smell, and what I've generally heard is that, if you can smell it, it's in your system.
Right. Well, that's like always the thing they tell you about, like when you go into the restroom and it stinks. Yeah. And it's just like, well, there's particulate matter in there. I always like to tell people that when they're eating to gross them out. Like, oh yeah, that's particulate matter, which means that it's all over you at this point. Right. But yeah, so I'm trying to figure out like
in it.
How much of this does it take for it to really be dangerous, or is this just, is the most dangerous car still statistically insignificant is what I'm trying to figure out right now.
That is a good question. That's what they don't really cover here. I don't think if you jump in, I've driven the Mitsubishi Outlander Sport, and I'm alive. So.
Yeah, me too. I think I spent a week in it.
May have, shaved off a second or two of your lifespan.
Who wants to live forever?
Who wants to live forever? I guess the car that scored the best, though, the least toxic materials inside was the Honda Civic. And you've driven a lot of Honda Civics this year. So.
I think I've driven every Honda Civic they make. But it's a good thing that they're low in that, because I don't really want to have an issue. But I guess, what am I looking up here? Like, for example, the federal government allows 600 parts per million of lead in household paint. So that's what the government considers to be safe. We're looking at the front seat of this Outlander. It's at 454 parts per million. So it's actually less dangerous than leaning against a wall sitting in this seat.
Right. And I think all of these things will come in under federal regulations. That's why we have federal regulations on these types of materials. So these are all considered safe by the government. There's no car, not even the Mitsubishi Outlander Sport, which has the most amount of toxic materials, is over the federal limit. Mm-hmm. So it could be perfectly safe or anyway, the chart that we have here sort of covers things. I guess it's like a 1 through 5 scale. They go from, or actually it's less than that. They go from 0.46, which is the Honda Civic, all the way up to the 3.17, which is the Mitsubishi Outlander Sport. The Chrysler 200 came in even with the Mitsubishi Outlander Sport. The Prius is the second least toxic, at least the 2011 Prius.
The Civic is greener than the Prius.
Apparently,
at least
yeah.
where your health is concerned. By, what is that? some amount. Some very small amount.
0.55 versus 0.46.
Right.
Yeah, you're getting into minuscule stuff there. Other notable cars on here, we have the Aveo, the Chevy Aveo 5, 2.89. That's a totally different generation than our Aveo.
Yeah, ours is probably like 5. A nice even 5
right.
For our 2007.
It's a 20.
Especially because I've actually just been rubbing lead all over the inside of it. Gives it a nice sheen on the dashboard. Yeah, I don't know. Some interesting sort of thing going on here. I'm not really alarmist. And I kind of also have a mind state of pretty much everything we touch is going to give you cancer. So I don't know why
I'm laughing at that.
want to freak out about that.
Interesting too. The Audi S5, 2012 Audi S5, only a 0.74. So
and what is it like? Under 1 is what I'm seeing here. It's under 1 means that you're good to go.
Yeah,
and above 1 it means that you need to think about your health. I don't know. I guess bottom line is if you're pregnant, don't buy a Mitsubishi Outlander Sport.
Yeah, maybe putting an infant in one of these cars.
Yeah,
I don't know if that'd be really bad. Again, yeah, take this with somewhat of. You can get alarmist about it, but I don't think it's too much to be concerned about.
Yeah, I'm starting to come around, and I'm feeling a little panicky about this.
Watch out, those cars. You have to before we get any new car, and we'll have to look this up on the chart, see where it stands, and see if we can actually minimize our time inside it.
I can see now where it's like a car comes in, Wayne's going to look it up on the chart, and he's going to go like, hey, you want to take this one, H1?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, I know it's a much faster and nicer car than the other one, but
it's instant death.
Right. I'll take the CR-V, you take the Bentley, okay?
Again, worth a brief shortening of lifespan, I would think, to ride around in a Bentley for a week.
Yeah. Toyota is actually bringing a new small hybrid to the Geneva Auto Show, and that's actually in a couple weeks. We're going to be there, so we'll see it live then. Right now, they've only released a little bit of teasing on it. There was a sketch, and you got some more information about that, didn't you, Antoine?
Right. So they came out with this sort of overblown sketch. So you don't really see a lot of details. You basically tell that it has 2 wheels, and then it's got like a really streamlined profile. This is their FTBH, that stands for Future Toyota. Which is all of their concepts have that prefix. The B segment, and H, of course, hybrid. So this is a vehicle that's going to be about the size of a Yaris. They're saying actually that it's going to be a little bit bigger. The next day, actually, we got a closer look at some really up close teaser pictures of like the headlights and a squiggly LED tail light sort of thing and a hybrid badge. But they're saying that it's going to be it's going to weigh less than the Toyota Aygo, which is actually even too small for our market. It's going to be under 1,700 pounds. So that's actually lighter than a first-gen Mazda Miata by about 400 pounds. So super light. It's about the same size as a Yaris, like I said, with more space on the inside. And they're saying that it's more aerodynamically slick than the upcoming Scion FRS, or I guess they said the GT86, because this comes from the Toyota UK design, or at least the press release came from the Toyota UK. But the most interesting thing about this is that they're saying that they're building this concept using commonplace, economically viable like materials and techniques. So it's not like they're doing some crazy like, I guess this probably won't be built using the same sort of fusing metal to composites that they were using in the LFA. It's designed to be able to be actually built cheaply. So I think this is interesting because it's a goofy looking concept. I'm sure it's going to be, but it's interesting because it kind of also because they're trying to figure out ways to make it economically viable to produce. We're going to see that trickle down into the next generation of Toyota vehicles. I think we're going to start seeing their next generations of hybrids, and even their next generation of regular internal combustion vehicles just getting lighter overall. And it seems like that's the easiest way to make a car more efficient.
Right. So this is strictly a concept, and it will be
A concept.
a concept when we see it. Because I was interested that you mentioned it's a B segment car, and that's about the same size as the Toyota Prius C, which is coming out soon.
Right.
So yeah, it would seem to be a strange and like a competitor to that. But if it's a concept, then it's just more maybe the future direction of the Prius C.
Right. I mean, you think about it like how we saw the what is the FTH something, whichever what the FT concept that ended up becoming the LFA came out like 7 years ago.
Oh yeah.
So I think that it's kind of more of a I think what they're trying to showcase is the lightweight construction, and it's basically a really neat sort of way to get people looking at it, but then also to kind of hammer in that PR message of going like, we're trying to figure out how to make things light and cheap. I guess it kind of goes along with, they're investing money into developing cheaper carbon fiber and ways to build carbon fiber. Some of the other automakers are doing that, but so I guess until the cost of carbon fiber comes down to a point that you can put it on like an economy car, I think they're probably just going to start using plastics for a lot more things, strong plastics.
Yeah. So they said hybrid, but they didn't specify anything about the powertrain in this one.
They said downsized full hybrid powertrain, so it'll probably be the one that's in the Prius C,
right?
Or the Yaris hybrid,
1.4, 1.6 with the standard Toyota electric Synergy system connected to it. Maybe they haven't gone to lithium-ion batteries yet, not for their standard system. So
I mean,
maybe they would for this.
If they're trying to keep weight down, that'd be a good way to go.
That's true. That is true. And that seems to be the trend among automakers in trying to get more efficient cars like this is decreasing the weight. And there's so much to be gained with that. So
you automatically fix everything that's wrong with a car. It becomes lighter on its toes. It brakes. It slows down better. It accelerates better. It's more efficient. You kind of immediately touch every dynamic of the vehicle's on the road demeanor by basically shaving off those pounds.
Yeah, so we're likely to probably see more lighter cars in the near future. I know they're lightening them up. I think a couple of cars we've seen recently have been lighter than we would expect even. So yeah, it's a good trend. In the field of automotive infotainment electronics, that's something we obviously put a lot of attention on here at CNET CarTech. We're seeing some reports that there's a lot of projection for growth in this area. One stat I've heard a while back, some institute last year said that automotive is actually the third fastest growing mobile platform for electronics. We're getting some new studies that just came out today. IHS, which used to be called iSupply. IHS is a market research firm. They do a lot of stuff in automotive electronics. They did a study that shows, this doesn't sound spectacularly fast growing, but they said that they just saw steady growth in automotive electronics. And this is going into, factory installed dashboard systems, this kind of thing. And these numbers mean that, if you're in this business, it's a good place to be.
Right. I mean, eventually they're showing projections all the way up to 2016. By then, cars will be driving themselves, so you're going to need something to keep you busy while you drive. So the world's your oyster at that point as far as like what kind of junk you can toss into the dashboard.
Yeah, they're talking about increase in production or increase in electronics in money in this field from 4.7 to 6.4%, ranging from. So they're seeing average maybe better than 5% growth by 2016 from now.
Right.
So that's a nice steady growth, and they're talking about it. Currently it's about surge to 33.5 billion this year, and be a 41.2 billion market by 2016. So lots of money in that field, and that just relates to all the new electronics we're going to see in cars, and certainly the chip makers are trying to cash in on this. I've talked to the people at NVIDIA a lot, Intel, Freescale. They've got chips to sell into this market, and then there's all the stuff that you actually see and touch, like the touch screens and all that. And along with this is interesting too. Similarly, and contributing to this automotive entertainment statistic, backup camera sales are expected to double in from 2011 to, what are we talking about? 2014, I think. Or no, actually they're going to 40.
They were saying, what is it? By 2015, they're going to be basically pumping out about 880,000 units by then. So that's, and then once you start getting past that, it just continues to grow. And I think I kind of have a bit of an understanding of why this is the case. And the problem is that you can't see out of the back of cars anymore.
That's true.
Just if you look at the way the design goes, and I talk to, it's funny, it's whenever I mention to people casually, like, in a bar that like, oh, I review cars, like one of the questions that always comes up when I start talking to older friends is, why can't you see out of cars anymore? They're always just like, why do cars have these really high, the windowsills have risen, the roof lines have dropped, the rear quarter windows behind the C panel have all but disappeared from cars, and it's just you're getting to a point where when you get in a car like the Toyota Yaris that we have in now, which is basically all greenhouse, it's just whoa, I can see around, and it's a bit amazing.
Yeah, it was surprising in that car. You can actually, they have high windows, high roof line.
Yeah. And it's just the windows are getting even more and more gunslit. And I just think it's because as the manufacturing process gets a little bit more sophisticated every year, automakers can actually do these things that you used to only kind of see chopped tops that were custom, or that when you didn't have the option to even add a backup camera option.
Well, some of it is safety too, as far as raising the belt line goes. Putting stronger reinforcement, side reinforcement indoors, and making the whole structure stronger to resist side impact and front impact. And the great test is that any car these days, any new car, try opening the window and putting your elbow over the window.
Not possible.
No, you're kind of like up like this.
Forget it.
Yeah.
I remember back in the day, you could I'd see people with their whole arm just hanging out.
Yeah.
It's just really weird.
Pick up aluminum cans on the side of the road as you drive along.
Yeah. But I think, and maybe it's the conspiracy theorist in me, but I think that there's a little bit of, hey, we've got an $1,100 backup camera option, and you can't really see out of the back of our cars, so it's a feature. Just give us the $1,100. So I think they're kind of building in a little bit of that blind spot detection systems and rear view cameras.
Yeah, part of the test drive is to actually back into a space.
Right, or it's just not as much of a design imperative because you can use the technology as a handicap in the designing. Before a rear view camera or a radar cruise control or the sonar blind spot detection was even an option, when you designed a car, you had to be able to see out of it because there's no other way. But now it's just like, oh, we'll fix it in post. We'll just add a backup camera option and we'll be good to go. It doesn't matter if you can't see anything in this area. We can fix that with tech.
I like that. Fix it in post.
Yeah.
Yeah, and designers can say we don't need a huge back window. And that Range Rover Evoque we had in recently, that had a very small rear window. And good thing that had a backup camera. It's funny. When lots of times when I and driving somebody around, and a lot of people don't get in the newest cars, and I start parking in the city, and they see the backup camera image come up on the center dash, and they're just like, "Whoa, that's so cool!" And it's and I'm used to it. I see this a lot.
Yeah.
But it is.
You start complaining, you're like, yeah, but the trajectory lines don't move. It's not really that big of a deal.
Yeah. Well, this article that we have on the backup camera sales doubling, they mentioned that, and this is something we've known, is that by 2014, I guess cars are going to have backup cameras. That's a federal mandate, and that's comes from the fact that a lot of people have backed over their kids in the driveway.
Yeah, they always use the kids as the option. I mean,
Yeah.
as the gets your attention sort of thing.
Yeah, it's the safety of
I've
the
never
children.
backed over a kid in my life.
Oh, well, that's good. That's good. But they also mentioned
Not for lack of trying.
Well, you still have a lot of time. You still have time to do it.
they mentioned some aftermarket camera kits you can also get for your existing vehicles. Anything that's pre-2014 that doesn't have a camera, so you can actually add a camera. And they mentioned a few companies here, but one that kind of caught my eye was company Boyo, B-O-Y-O, which apparently is going to offer an HD backup camera.
Yep.
So
because you need that, right?
you can have widescreen and
Cram 1080 lines of resolution into your tiny backup camera screen on your dashboard.
So you can see the look of fear in the kid's eye as you're backing over them in nice detail.
Yeah, I think what's interesting, the things that you want in a backup camera are, well, I mean, you want good night vision because sometimes the reverse lights on your car aren't very good. So the best backup cameras will offer really good night vision. You want them to be not easily stealable. And sometimes that's as simple as just using the right bolts when you're, attaching it to your license plate frame is how most aftermarket cameras are added. And then, if at all possible, and I'm starting to see more of this, is in addition to the backup camera, which already usually has a really wide angle that allows you to kind of even see a little bit into the blind spots of the car when you're backing up, which is good when you're kind of turning into a spot. But if you can get something that has like proximity detection, usually that involves drilling 4 holes in your bumper and putting sensors down there. I think Alpine has a kit that does that. But that's like an extra layer of protection just to let you know how far away from something you are. Because sometimes when you get that really wide fisheye, it's difficult to judge distance. Interesting thing about most backup cameras is the distance is a bit logarithmic. So what looks like an inch away from the bottom of the screen is, about 6 inches. The next inch up covers about 2 feet. And the next inch up sometimes covers even more feet. So it's difficult to gauge distance.
Yeah.
And you'll find that you approach things a lot more quickly than you would if you were just looking directly out of the window.
That's why it's good to have those distance lines that are sometimes overlaid on those things. I was thinking about this, mandate on all cars, and there's some cars that I don't think really need backup cameras. I mean, certainly trucks and big sedans and things like that, sure. But my own car, it's a small, BMW Z3. A backup camera on that is almost ridiculous.
I don't know, because
I'm looking at tire height behind me.
Tuesday night, I was sitting in a car parked on the side of the road. I was waiting to go into a bar. Like the band didn't start playing. It's playing till 9. I got there at like 8:45. So I'm sitting in the car listening to the radio, and this dude pulls up in a Mazda Miata, first generation, tiniest car in the world, and he still, like, plenty of space in the spot, still does the bumper check, like boom, doop. Like, he couldn't gauge how much space was behind his car. And I'm just like, it doesn't really matter what kind of car you're in. There's always going to be someone who's just not comfortable with like gauging distance, and the camera can help those people.
That's true. I mean, what I find with my car is I usually underestimate how much space I have. So if I'm backing up, I'm like, oh, is there still enough space back there? Then I get out of after I park, I get out of the car, and there's still like 5 feet between me and what's behind me.
Better safe than sorry.
Moving on to this is a story you picked up this week.
Right.
Most powerful Ferrari ever. Tell us about it.
So the Ferrari 599 is getting a little bit long in the tooth, due for replacement. And so Ferrari's actually came out with a teaser video kind of showcasing the car that's going to replace it. I think they'll actually be taking the wraps off of this car on the 29th. The rumors are stating that this car is going to be called the Ferrari F620 GT. It's going to have a V12 engine up front under the hood, rear-wheel drive, kind of the same configuration as the Ferrari 599. But what's interesting about this car is that Ferrari's claiming that it is the most powerful Ferrari ever. Right now, if you're talking about production cars, I think that title belongs to the Ferrari FF Shooting Brake, which is putting out like 660 some odd horsepower. You could count the Ferrari 599 GTO, which puts out 661 horsepower. I'm pretty sure they're not counting the 599XX, which puts out 720 horsepower, because that's like an extremely limited race variant. So
yeah, it's strictly track on that car, not a road-going car.
We're guessing about 660 horsepower from this V12 that they're going to be bringing out sometime soon. I'm pretty sure, looking at the profile, that it's going to be heavily based on the Ferrari FF, maybe with more power, definitely without that Ferrari like 4FR, whatever their all-wheel drive system's called, and that's as simple as chopping the front transmission off of that. The interesting thing about the Ferrari FF is it's got 2 gearboxes. One in the back of the engine that has like 7 or 8 speeds, and one at the front that has 2 speeds. And it only engages the front gearbox when you need all-wheel drive. So if you just drop that off, change the shooting brake into a coupe, add a couple more horsepower, I think we're pretty close to what we'll expect to see in this next Ferrari.
Yeah, the profile, I mean, it's a pretty heavily masked car in the video and the screenshot you grabbed here. But it does look like a GT car.
Yeah.
And which you'd expect if it's a 599 replacement. It's interesting that Ferrari is going more powerful when so many companies are, losing horsepower and trying to get fuel efficiency. But I guess Ferrari doesn't really care that much about that.
Well, it's Ferrari, so I mean, how many are they going to sell a year? 10.
That's true.
And I mean, it also has to live in the same world as the Aventador, which I don't know if it directly competes against the Aventador as an all-wheel drive mid-engine car. But I mean, as far as just like a halo vehicle. Between those two Italian companies that are pretty different in their philosophies, I think it's interesting to see Ferrari kind of throwing its hat into the horsepower race there.
Yeah. So the wraps come off this on February 29th?
Yep.
Leap Day. So that'll be this week. We'll be looking out for that one and certainly want to get as much information on it as soon as they make that available. And hopefully we'll see that car in Geneva too. Seems like, if they're taking the wraps off on this week, then it should be ready or next week.
Yeah, it should be there.
Should be ready for Geneva.
I'll try to touch it. I very seriously doubt I'll drive it ever.
Yeah. Hard to get in those sometimes. Last story we have is Porsche, which has been kind of teasing, working around, letting us know somewhat about a small SUV they're working on, something smaller than the Cayenne, and they've at least released some sketches and stuff like that. We know they're working on it. So this week they came up with a name for it. They said, okay, here's the name for our new car. It's called the Macan.
Okay.
Or the Macan. Or the Macan.
It's not getting any better.
Macan. Yeah, I mean, that's, first off, people are going to be like, how do you pronounce that? I'm sure there'll be all sorts of variations.
I'm sure they'll get the hang of it just like they got the hang of every other awkward name.
Yes.
Cayenne.
Cayman.
Cayman's not hard.
Boxster.
There's some other. If within VW Group, the Touareg.
Oh yeah, the Touareg is a tough one. This car was originally sort of named Cajun. They were calling it the Cajun, which I kind of liked. The Cajun.
It's just very un-Porsche name.
Well, that Cayenne, Cajun, Cayman, it all kind of made sense, I thought.
The Creole.
The Creole. That'd be a nice. That'd maybe be a better name for the Panamerica.
You just imagine
or Panamera.
The Panamera. That's what they call it. The Creole.
I think it should be called the Creole. I think that'd be a better name if they wanted to be consistent here.
Not be called anything.
Well, it's funny because Porsche is they sort of insist on their in the press release for this car. They insisted that every one of their cars has a name that represents the car very well. It represents its attributes. So they mention but they don't have any really consistency in those names.
So what is the 911? That doesn't have anything to do with attributes. It's a model number.
No, yeah, that came up, and they totally ignored that in their press release. But they mentioned the Boxster describes a combination of a Boxer engine and a Roadster. The Cayenne stands for sharpness. The Cayman is snappy and agile. And a Panamera is more than a Gran Turismo, capable also of winning the Carrera Panamericana long-distance race. So they're working from a lot of different books here.
Yeah, they're all over the place with their naming. At the end of the day, though, I don't really care what badge is, what the badge says. What's interesting is what this car is. Now, I don't really have a good idea of how big we expect this car to be, because in my mind, I'm looking at this picture and I'm thinking something the size of the Evoque, because that's just where my mind state would be interesting. But I mean, is it bigger than that, or? Well,
actually, it's already confirmed that it'll share a platform with the Audi Q5. Mm-hmm. So that is a kind of smaller SUV.
Right.
And I think it'll probably likely have the 3.2 liter V6 of that car, because they've sort of gotten this whole thing where Porsche and VW and Audi are sharing a lot of their powertrains, at least at a certain segment. So I wouldn't expect any really high-revving 3.8 Boxer engine in this car.
Yeah, the more I look at this, the more it looks less like a flattened Cayenne and more like a stretched Panamera on really big wheels. Like someone just decided, I want a Panamera donk. And that's just what they did.
Of course, with all those sketches, the designers always put on the biggest wheels possible. It's like, we're going to have 30s on this car.
Someone should actually just make a car that is designed around 30-inch wheels.
I'd drive it.
Then they could put on their press release, biggest wheels ever in a production car. The world's largest, blah, blah, blah. That's kind of seems like they like to do that. So someone should just take advantage of that.
Oh, also got to mention too, Macan actually means tiger in some other language, Indonesian.
Indonesian.
They say, yeah. So that's where this car gets its attributes from, I guess. It's like a tiger.
La Tigre.
La Tigre. That'd be even better. La Tigre. The Porsche La
Should come in
Tigre.
orange with black stripes. I'll buy one. If they come out with one in orange and black stripes, I'll sell everything I own to purchase one just to prove a point.
Right. It'll probably be the least expensive Porsche ever, or currently too in the lineup.
I guess.
Yeah. But moving on, I think we've said enough about the Porsche Macan. Let's go on the road in the Range Rover Evoque. One thing interesting about this car is it's got a 4-cylinder engine. It's a 2-liter direct injection turbocharged engine.
That's very un-Land Rover.
Yeah, it's supposed to get good fuel economy because of that. So the EPA rating is 18 city and 28 highway. And I've seen definitely in the mid-range of around 25 miles per gallon with a decent amount of highway driving. So it'll get probably better mileage than any Range Rover, Land Rover that's gone before.
It's probably the best Range Rover that's suited for the road also. The sort of like low ride height, very car-like. Again, that small engine. I mean, this car doesn't really make very many off-road pretenses. You do have the buttons right here for your sort of like traction control systems for things like snow or uneven, sandy terrain. But I mean, it's not really the same as the, I would think, is the system that's in the bigger, for example, LR4 or the LR2 even.
And this being a Land Rover too, this is a luxury vehicle. So we have a really good audio system here, Meridian. It's definitely above average. I wouldn't say it's the best I've ever heard, but it's really good. It's pretty fine detail. We also have a navigation system here with one of these interfaces. Land Rover and Jaguar, which kind of the same company now, they tended to go for these very graphic heavy interfaces. I think this is a little too complicated and a little bit slow.
It's like you hit a button for like menu, for example, then it has to think for a beat, and then you get to watch a nice little half-a-second animation of the menus rendering, and it's just, you really don't want that when you're driving around. You just want the menu so you can get your eyes back on the road.
But there are also a lot of buttons thrown around here, which it could probably be a slightly better graphic design, because I don't think it's the best in usability. And like in Jaguars, we've got this crazy little shift knob which rises up out of the center console, and it's really just a dial. It isn't actually a shifter because all cars are pretty much electronically shifted now, so you can work with that. We've got paddle shifters too for the 6-speed automatic transmission. And one last thing I got to say that I think is interesting about this car is that the engine, I mentioned it's a 2-liter direct injection turbo. It produces 240 horsepower and something around 270 pound-feet of torque. And those figures are exactly the same as Ford's EcoBoost engine.
Huh.
So I think it's the same engine.
You think?
Yeah, we haven't proven that yet, but I think there's a good chance that Land Rover is sourcing their engine from this car from Ford. We actually have confirmed that now that it is the EcoBoost engine from Ford. It's actually not quite the same as the one in the Edge EcoBoost. The Edge produces 270 foot-pounds of torque. The Evoque's engine only does 251 pound-feet, although it does have that 240 horsepower figure too, which matches. And I've read elsewhere that this is sort of a slightly different version of the engine that's in the Focus ST too. Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, it's the same technology. It's the direct injection and the turbochargers. Basically the same engine, slightly different tuning on it, though. I'm not sure why they would tune or lose some of the torque on it. I'm not quite sure where that would happen.
It could come from anywhere. If they're measuring the power at the flywheel, it could be a different flywheel that needs to mate up with their different transmission. It could be a minor difference in the length of the intake. Any number of things could cause you to lose, a little bit of torque.
Yeah. Now, this car, the Evoque, has been it's amazing. Like every week I get a press release from Jaguar saying, oh, we've won 10 more awards for the Evoque. It's it's the North American Truck of the Year. I think it is the North American Truck of the Year, actually. It's, the Truck of the Year all over the world, and it's winning this award and that award, and I don't get it.
Yeah, for starters, it's a good looking car. Like if I ever meet the person who designed this, I will shake their hand. Like I mean, that's it for start. I mean, they do all sorts of like there's a lot of like neat touches, and it feels like it was designed by one person, as opposed to a lot of cars that are just like, oh, we'll just take the lights from this car, and or our other car has boomerang shaped tail lights, so we got to figure out a way to make that happen. It just looks like it has a singular purpose. Things like the fender vents, which I normally hate, but if you look at them, they line up so perfectly with the headlights that it almost looks like the headlight goes through that sort of flared fender. And it's just cohesive design. It just looks like it's, machined from one chunk of metal.
Now, I would not argue with you. I think it is a good-looking car as well. Well, not all of our readers agree, but I do like the look of the car, but I guess from the rest of it, I'm just kind of thinking, what's so special?
Well, it's a Land Rover.
Well, actually, yeah, it is. It is. The official name, I think, is 2012 Land Rover Range Rover Evoque.
And then whatever suffixes you want to add past that.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a good-looking car, and it is a nice engine, but as we've seen, it's a Ford engine. Mm-hmm. But it is good and high tech. I'm just not sure. Is this better than, say, the Audi Q5 or something? As an example.
Better, maybe not. Definitely not. I mean, like, okay, if you're talking about cabin tech, no.
Yeah.
It's just that the system in the Evoque is relatively new. As I mean, it's newer than Acura system.
Oh yeah.
But it felt dated when it came out, and so it just feels a little dated. There's just like a lot of just watching, menus load, which is. It's obnoxious when you're doing it on your laptop and you go to a website that's too much flash. It's, in my opinion, a little dangerous in a car.
Right. You can't actually turn off those animations, which is good. And there really is no reason to put animations in a cabin tech interface because, when you're looking at it, you're just looking at to find the button you need to push. Then you're looking back at the road. Then you're looking back at it to see what screen you're on now. Yeah, you don't want to see those animations happen, or if they're happening, they're not happening while you're looking at it.
Right.
Or they shouldn't be. And it was fairly basic cabin tech stuff. It's good, but it's not, cutting edge. And that's why I think in our estimation, car technology, car tech, it was like, it's okay, but it's not blowing me away. It's not, it's not a connected car or anything like that.
Right. But I mean, would I rather be seen in an Audi Q5 or in a Range Rover Evoque? I think I would rather be seen in the Evoque.
Mm-hmm.
It all comes back to the styling, and I hate to keep like being that guy who's just. And this is a classic case of form winning out over function for me, because I mean I feel like the all-wheel drive system, the off-road chops that it may or may not have, are a bit of a non-issue when you're talking about the target market for this vehicle. But I mean, people want to be seen in a car, and when you're talking about like a premium vehicle, premium soft roader, I mean it's already kind of a vehicle that exists because it exists. It doesn't really serve a purpose. And so you come down to the point where you're discussing style, and it's just the Evoque. It's feminine and masculine at the same time. I feel like you wouldn't feel, less manly driving this around, but at the same time, like, a woman wouldn't feel like she was riding around in she wouldn't feel like she's in a Jeep Wrangler. It's way easier to get into and out of than any other Range Rover that I've ever driven.
Yeah, it's way too stylish to be a macho vehicle.
Right. But I mean, I guess it's kind of like, suits are kind of designed around a function. So if you look at certain styles of suits, you'll see that they're based on like riding gear. So, the original intention is that, you would ride a horse in this sort of outfit, and it was designed to be practical, but then over years it becomes stylish. And it's kind of the same thing here, where you can kind of see the Land Rover and Range Rover styling cues. So it's like there's a echoing back to this sort of like, I can go anywhere and, drive through the Sahara Desert and whatever in this vehicle, but without sort of the overtures.
Yeah. I think it borrows a lot from Jaguar too, which is interesting, showing more of that Jaguar Land Rover collusion.
Well, definitely on the interior. It's like the whole thing was lifted.
Yeah.
built out of a Jaguar.
Yeah, definitely that drive selector, for example, a good example. But the also I think the rear windows in this kind of remind me somewhat of the that new Jaguar XJ with the big sort of sunglasses style rear window. This also has that like slit sunglasses kind of thing look in the back and that really narrow rear window. Interesting too. This car, we had the 5-door. There's also a coupe version. Now, I don't know if you can actually get that in the U.S., the coupe version, but it would be primarily less functional because getting in the back seats, you have to crawl over the seats. It's more of a European thing, I believe.
It's already kind of looking like a Mini Cooper from this side angle. Like the more I look at it, you take off 2 doors and it starts getting into Mini Countryman.
Well, it's partly that roof, which looks kind of a cap on top of there because they have the black pillars and then the body color roof. That definitely has sort of a Mini Cooper look to it. One thing I found too from this car, and you didn't really say you experienced it, but I don't think you drove it as much, is that I felt it lunged a lot when you're trying to drive it. If you're trying to keep a smooth, steady pace, and then you just give a little gas, suddenly it's like, whoa, it wants to like leap forward, and you're just like, no, I don't want to hit the car in front of me.
Sure you do.
Because you can ride right over it because it's a Land Rover.
You don't have enough ground clearance.
That's true. That may be something. I've seen a lot of videos online of people fording rivers and going up muddy or rocky surfaces, and it seems to do all right. But it doesn't have that adaptive. It doesn't have the suspension that can lift.
Right.
You can actually get a magnetic ride suspension for it, which will make it corner better and handle really well if you're blasting around on roads.
Right.
But that doesn't really help you in situations where you're off-road and you need more ground clearance.
Yeah, so I won't be able to drive this on the moon, which is where I believe that you should actually be driving this.
On the moon,
yeah,
okay.
Like I'm just expecting to see this like, in somebody's like B science fiction movie where they're like, we're on Mars and we're driving around. And they're just out in the desert with like a red filter and a Range Rover Evoque, and I'd believe it.
I think we need a third opinion here from the family man in the room. Mitch, as far as toting your family around, would this be a car you'd prefer to do it in?
No. I think the back is too small. Put car seats on? No way.
How much space do kids take?
It's not the kids, it's the seats. And then the state of California is thinking about changing it so that even if I forgot the weight, like you basically be 8 years old, but if you're under a certain weight, you have to be in a booster seat.
Ooh. That's going to be serious stigmatizing for 8-year-olds.
It's going to be really difficult for Brian Tong driving his 0.
Can you fit
He might need to be in a booster seat.
I hope he doesn't watch this show.
I wonder if they can anchor seats down in the front seat of a Z.
That'd be great. It's like feet don't reach the pedals anymore.
Well, that was the 2012 Range Rover Evoque. The video and review are all online at CNET, cars.cnet.com. You can check it out there. Let's take a look at what's in the CNET garage. So we've just reviewed the Honda CR-V, the Jeep Wrangler, and the Range Rover Evoque. A lot of SUVs in, little off-roaders, soft-roaders. And right now in the garage, we've got the BMW 328i, the 2012 version with the 4-cylinder. And the new Toyota Yaris.
It's a car.
It's a car.
It's like you have to say that. You can't just say Yaris and leave it be.
This has been Car Tech Live, CNET Car Tech Live for February 23rd. I'm Wayne Cunningham with Antoine Goodwin in the studio, Mitch Chang at the board. You can find us online. You can look at our show notes and some of these stories if you want to do a little more further reading, if you didn't quite get the whole gist of it from what we've just been blathering about. cartech.cnet.com. Go take a look for the blog there for the show. You can also follow us on Twitter. Brian Cooley, who's not here this week, he's Brian Cooley, just one word, BRINCOOLEY. I am Wayforn, WAY4NE for silent. And Antoine is Antgoo, ANTGOO on Twitter. Thanks, guys.